G'day everyone, welcome back to another episode of Python for Spike Prime. Today we're going to learn how to use lists to give our robot commands. If you haven't been following these episodes, then please make sure that you check out all the videos over here because all the lessons flow on from each other, and it'll be great if you don't miss out on anything, okay? So today we're going to look at lists, and in the past lessons we've already seen a few different data types, right? A few different things like how numbers and strings interact with each other. And today we're going to learn about collections, okay? And the collection that we're looking at in particular is a list. If you've done lists in Scratch, then you'll know that it's one of the harder things to do in Scratch. But in Python, lists are pretty easy to understand. So let's dive right into it. So we'll start off with our Spike Prime software. And what I want you to do is start a new project. Go into Python, and then we'll just call this one lists. Okay, so make sure you have the driving base 3 built, and for us we have moved the color sensor, so that's facing up instead of facing towards the ground. That way we are going to be able to give it different commands by showing it different colors. Okay, so what we're trying to do today is to teach our robot how to store a sequence of colors and then loop through them again to do different movements, okay, just like a navigation robot. Over here we have hub equals prime hub, so this is where we're going to set our objects. Okay, so go wheels equals motor pair, and then it is going to be C and D. And then we're going to have color sensor equals color sensor, and it's attached to BE. All right. And then finally we're going to have a list. So we're just going to call it our first one, my list. Okay, my list equals. So how do we define a list? So a list is denoted by square brackets. Okay, so you go open square bracket and close square bracket. That'll make an empty list. Okay, so an empty list isn't going to do much, but it's going to be like a container that stores a sequence of information later on. So how does what does a list look like? Inside a list, you can have a sequence of any kind of information. Okay, so you can have numbers, you can have words, you can even have other lists. So a list full of lists is called a multi-dimensional list. So you can have a list full of lists full of lists. Okay, and they're useful for sorting things out in sequence. So for our purposes, for robotics, we are going to make it so that we have a list of directions that the robot is going to be able to store using the color sensor, but then also it's going to replay through the list those stored values. So my list is an empty list at the moment, empty array. So let's show you how we would normally work with a list. So let's say this list wasn't full of colors. Let's say this was a list full of my favorite foods. Okay, so let's go pizza, pasta, and spaghetti. Oh, spaghetti is kind of the same thing, chips. Okay, these are my favorite foods. So if I was to try to add more things to the list, if I wanted to add something like seafood to the list, then I would do something like this. I would go my list dot append seafood. Okay, And then when we execute the code, we can do something like this. We can go print my list. What that's going to do is that's going to print out the contents of my list in the console. Okay, so you click on the console again. Remember where we used to debug our code. You click on the console and then we plug in our robot and run the code. Okay, so you see that in the console it has just printed out the square brackets that denotes a list, and inside we have 4 items. We got pizza, pasta, chips and seafood. Okay, even though when I created the list I only had 3 items, I added an extra item when I go append. Okay, so here I can also say I can also print how many items there are in my list. So I go comma, there are, and then I can go length, so len, open bracket, my list. So what this does is it will come out with an integer of how many items are in the list. Okay, so there are this many items in my list. Okay, so here I'm going to print out the list, so my list, and then I'm going to print out there are this number of items in my list. Okay, so let's try that. See, so we've printed out the list, and then I write in there are 4 items in my list. Okay, so just by doing this little bit of an activity, we have already learned all the essential parts that we need in order to do the next part, which is to apply this list to our robot so that it takes in some colors and uses it to execute some commands. So let's try that out. So here we are now confident with working with lists, right? So when we define a list, we want to make sure we use square brackets, and then we use append to add things to the list. And if we want to check how many things are in a list, we go use the length method. Okay, so that's all good. So now we can comment this out, and then we can delete this, and then we can make my list blank again. Okay. Oh well, we'll remove all this. Okay, so now we have a blank list. What are we trying to do? We're trying to make it so that when we run the code, the robot is going to wait for 3 colors to be loaded into the list. Okay, and after it's detected 3 colors have been loaded into the list, then it will try to execute 3 different moves based on those colors. So we're doing a while loop because we want to repeat this scanning process until something happens. We want to repeat this scan until we have 3 items in the list. So while length of my list is less than 3. Then what do? Then we are going to add the color sensor code. So color equals color sensor dot get color, like that. Okay, if color is equal to, and we're going to use 3 colors today. We're going to use red, white and blue. So these Pokeball container colors that I just got from my 3D printer. So we're going to go if color equals red, then in my list I will append that color. Okay. In fact, we will make it so that if it's red, if color equals red, or if the color equals blue, or if the color equals white, we will add that color. So here, If color equals red, we append the color, or color equals blue, or color equals white. Okay, so this should make it so that it's going to add a different color to the list based on what we shine there. But then also we need to give it a chance to actually store the color so that we can change it, because right now when it's in this while loop, it can be running something like 100 or 200 times a second, right? So when you shine a red color on the light, it's going to put red in this list hundreds of times, and we don't want it to do that. We want it to just do it once and then give us a chance to change to a different color. So in order to do that, we're going to use a buzzer and make a beep sound. So we'll append the color, and then also hub.speaker.beep, and then we'll go 60, and then we'll beep for 1 second. Okay. So now what do we have? We have this while loop. If the list is less than 3 items long, then we are going to keep checking for the color on the color sensor. Okay. If the color is equal red, blue, or white, it's going to append that color to my list, and then also make a beep sound at a frequency of 60 and a duration of 1. And then after those 3 times have been done, let's do a test. Let's make sure that we can print out the list and make sure that it has those colors stored in there. So let's try this. Okay. Yep, first one, second one, third one. So if I open up the console, you see that it's got white, red, red, because it has stored the 3 colors that I've just shined on the light, and it's not going to store anymore because we made it so that it will break out of the loop after there are 3 items inside the list. All right, very good so far. Let's go to the next part, which is to iterate through the list and then redo the commands that we have given it. So we've printed the list, that's good. And in order to iterate through a list, we just do this. We go for I in my list. So this is like a special for loop. So instead of doing a for loop where we use range, we use for I in whatever list that you want to loop through. And what it does is that it will automatically loop through each item in a list. Okay, so you don't have to define the length of the list. You just have to give it the list, and then the for loop will automatically loop through each item in the list. And the variable that we set as I, that will be equal to the item that is returned through that list. Okay, so let's have a look at that. For I in my list, then what we're going to do is we go if I is equal to red, then we want it, I've been using double quotation marks, haven't I? So we wanted to make it so that if we see red, then the wheels will move at, say, 1 second. And we're going to go towards the right. So red is going to go towards the right. Blue is going to make it move towards the left. And white is going to make it move forward. Okay. So here we have, if I equals red, it's moving to the right. Elif I is equal to blue, And then we're going to do the opposite of this, so move towards the left. Elif I equals white. Then we move straight. And just in case there is any kind of mistake and we have stuff other than red, white, and blue, then for else we go wheels dot stop. Okay, but hopefully this will never actually get used. All right, and that's it. Let's try it out. Cool. So the robot moved forward, then turned towards the left, and then turned towards the right, and then turns towards the left. As you can see, lists are really easy to use in Python, and especially for Lego Spike Prime. We've learned how to create a list, and we've learned how to append things onto a list. We've also learned how to find out the length of a list, and finally to iterate and loop through a list. Okay, and all these techniques are going to be really helpful for you when you are creating your own robots in Python. I hope you enjoyed the lesson. Please make sure you like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video, and I will see you again next time. Bye bye.